Thank you, Matt. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here with me tonight on a Monday night. So thank you. I want to make sure that out of this session you get, or I can help as many of you as possible. So I do, like Matt said, want it to be very interactive. A lot of you go to different schools. A lot of you have different virtual learning experiences so far. So I'll do a little bit of talking in the beginning with some examples, and I will also provide you all with some samples of things that I use so that maybe you can take away from this meeting and fill it in yourself or see if it helps you, and of course adjust accordingly to how you think it's going to best fit in your schedule now that we have virtual learning with what's going on. So to get started, I would like to let you all know why I'm so passionate about this. And it has to do with organization. I think in order to succeed as virtual learners, we need to understand that being organized is something that's very important. And how I came about, or why I was so passionate about it, and hopefully you can relate to me in somehow, is because growing up, I was always playing sports. I was trying to balance my sports life and my academics. So I had to maintain both at a very high level. And we know that with all the classes that you take in high school, whether it's an honors level, college prep, AP, and then having to play a sport and have a match, or maybe a swim meet. In my case, I was a swimmer. I had to figure out very quickly how I was going to manage all of that. And kind of keeping it in your head is a lot to deal with when you're a teenager. So I had to write it down somewhere. And it started with my sophomore year of high school. My sophomore year of high school, I decided to join track. And my mom was kind of like, okay, you can join as long as you can balance track, soccer, swimming, and keep good grades. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. It was a challenge that I accepted, but it was very overwhelming when I was trying to just keep track of it in my head. So I asked her, can you take me to the store and buy a calendar, like a planner that they sell at the store? And from there, I kind of just started doing my own daily schedule with my classes and planning out all my weekends, because every weekend I either had a soccer game, a track meet, a swim meet, whatever it was. So that's how I developed the skill. That being said, I'm still developing. I think this is a skill that we can obviously always get better at. And I like to relate it to sports because, again, I'm a swim coach and I was an athlete my whole life. So the way that I kind of tell my athletes to think about it, and my students, is by, think of it as a skill that your coach gives you if you play a sport, or if you play an instrument, a skill that, you have to try for the first time. And you try it and you either do it well or you don't do it as well. And obviously, if you don't do it as well, then it takes practice. You practice over and over and over. But then when you do it well the first time, I'm sure most of your coaches will probably be like, well, that's awesome, but we can, do a couple of techniques better. So that's exactly what the webinar is about. Just having all of you have some sort of organizational skills already. You just might not know it. And your technique of the skill is at different levels. So that's how I like to think of it. Some of you might be very good, or some of you might be like, right in the middle. You have an idea, but not really know how to implement it in your virtual learning, because let's face it, it's new to everybody. As a teacher at Delbarton, it's new for us, and we're adjusting every single day. So that brings me to my next point. This is a skill that you're probably going to need in your careers at some point. How it's related to my career, I'm a teacher. If I'm not organized, my students are not going to be organized, and I can't expect them to be organized if I'm not. So one of the skills that I implement in all of my students on day one when school starts is, hey, have your binder, let's divide it. I go through the whole process with them. And it's exciting because towards the middle of the year, they're kind of on me now, like, Ms. Lopez, where does this go? Where do I put it in my binder? You know, stuff like that. So it's awesome. And it's something that we practice every single day in order for them to get to that point. So what I want to do now is I want to go ahead and show you some of those skills that I do with my students, and kind of backtracking a little bit. I didn't give a formal background of me. I'm a Spanish teacher at Delbarton School. I'm also the assistant swim coach, and I coach club swimming as well. So in everything that I do, I have to be organized so that I can organize even swim meets and my assignments, and, you know, make my students as successful as possible. So I hope that this helps you in some way, shape, or form. I'm going to share the screen with you, and if you are able to see it, or maybe let's do this. If you're not able to see it, how about on the chat, you tell us that you cannot see it, and we'll try to fix that for you. So one of the things that is important when we, give me 1 second. One of the things that's important as virtual learners, and what we're doing now with the situation that we find ourselves in, is definitely trying to find a schedule that works best for us, right? Even as teachers, we have to find something that's reasonable for us to balance work life and personal life. And I'm sure you as students, same thing. Can everybody see what I have on the screen, by the way? I'm assuming that we can, if I haven't heard from you guys. Okay, so thank you. What I've done here for you is I've done 3 different templates of schedules. I'm hoping that one of the 3 will work for you, and if not, please, 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 please feel free to use this and adjust it according to what you need, okay? Because again, everybody's gonna do something different. So the first schedule that I have here is a schedule who is a student that would like to wake up at 8 a.m. and have 45-minute classes, with the exception of first period. First period will always be an hour long, just because I'm thinking of teacher mode, and I'm like, okay, they just woke up, you just had breakfast, you should be energized. So we have from 8 to 8:45, you'll have breakfast, you have your first period, second period. Notice I didn't even put any of your classes. It's really for you to build it your own way, because we'll talk about in a second what your first period might be, or your second period, and what your schools are doing. So as I'm going through this with you, please kind of think about, how would I use this in my schedule? So this one also emphasizes 15-minute breaks. It has 2 of them. And the reason for that is because in reality, when you are at home and when we're working from home as teachers, it's very different than the school environment, which I'm sure we all miss. And it's hard not to take a break when you are in, whether it is in your bedroom or the office or the kitchen, okay? And realistically, even in school, we have like 5 minutes, 7 minutes transition times between classes. Okay, so kind of what I did was, instead of giving you the 8:40, or not me, but what I was thinking was, instead of giving the 5 minute, 7 minute transition periods, kind of just adds to 15 minutes after taking 2 classes, after sitting down for 2 classes. Same thing with third period, fourth period, and then your 15-minute break. And then last, you have your 5th period and your 6th period. Again, if you don't have 6 periods with virtual learning, adjust and do what you need to do for your own sanity. Lunch, I did 12:45 to 1:45, and then 1:45 to 2:30, it would be like used for review time. And 2:30 to 4 would be like homework, and then from there on out, you would be technically free, okay? Now, I do want to make some points that maybe you're thinking, well, what would review time look like? Review time for me, when I think of my students and how I've been helping them through this process, is going back to classes and class work that you probably didn't finish within the hour, within the 45 minutes given in the schedule. You can also contact your teachers during that time. Maybe you need to review with them. You scheduled a conference call with them. Or you can also, with your classmates, maybe do a Google Meet. One of you starts a Google Meet, a Zoom, and you have a review on, let's say, an English lesson that all of you are confused on, and maybe all together can work together to do that. So that review time is really supposed to be used for review, whether it's your teacher, by yourself, or with your classmates. The homework time. In our class, we noticed that, or in our school, sorry, some teachers are kind of just giving the assignments and not really specifying what is homework and what is not homework. So if in your school and your teachers are giving your homework, then obviously that would be for this slot. If not, I would use it again as a review time to go through anything you have to go through. Whether maybe it's also to get ahead, which is what I said here. So if you are done with that day's of work, you can definitely move ahead. And if not, if you just want to work at pace, then you are technically at free time. But I think by having something like this definitely gives you a little bit more structure and a sense of relief, in my opinion. I had to make one for myself since we started this. So it's definitely nice to have. So that would be one option. The other option that I also came up with is a little different, shorter classes and less breaks, because the classes are shorter. Again, feel free to use whatever you think is best. These classes are 30 minutes, except again, with the exception of the first class, it's always an hour. And the lunch is a little earlier, it's at 12. And then the flexible time here is the same thing as your review time. On the other schedule, it would be used to contact your teachers, conference call your teachers, or review any assignments. And then homework, notice, is always used for last. And the reason I recommend my students to do that is because you want to mimic the school schedule as much as possible to give us some sort of structure. And by having homework last, that's exactly what we do when we go to school. You kind of go through all your material, and then you do the homework for the classes at the end. And then your free time, 4 o'clock, again, you're off. Technically, your school day is done, and you can move on to whatever else you need to do. The last schedule that I did is a little bit different. Well, not a little bit, it's very different than the other two. This actually models more of a block schedule. If that's what your school is doing right now. This is actually a sample of what we are doing at Delbarton School, which is we actually have to meet with our classes 3 times a day. So with different classes, obviously. So this would be like first block, I meet with them. I meet with my second block, and then I meet with my third block. Obviously, I'm not asking you, or you don't need to meet with your teachers live, but it's kind of just so that you have an idea of something that would work. Maybe your school's already doing live sessions, so maybe this would fit more into your schedule. Again, whatever works for you. And then when it says work on other class of your choice, what we do during this time is the kids get to choose, okay, I'm behind in this class, or I want to get ahead in this class. I should do that during 9:15 to 10:30. Also, a lot of kids reach out to their teachers during this time. So think about it as like your review time or your flexible time, where you kind of get to choose what you need to do in order to stay on top of your assignments. And then lunch would be from 12:30 to 1. And then if you notice, this schedule actually ends earlier because we only meet 3 classes a day at Delbarton right now with our virtual learning. And then the other 2 or the other 3, the kids get to choose what they want. So by doing that, it ends earlier. And again, the other reason is because homework is mostly tied into the classes already. So we don't separate the homework. It's already added to the live meeting, if that makes sense. So those are 3 samples that I'm going to share with you through this chat of schedules. And again, when having a schedule, it keeps you organized and kind of makes you feel like, okay, I have some sense and structure in my life again, because I know that can be hard. At least for my students, it was. So the other thing I want to show you is a checklist that I provided, or will provide for you all. A checklist, this is what I use with my students now. We don't use it when we're actually in school, but in order for them to be successful during the virtual learning experience right now, I figured they need to have something where they can cross out and know that they did it, because if not, they would be completely lost. So this is an example of what I do with my students. But then at the bottom, when you scroll down and I share it with you, is a blank sample so that you can have if needed and would like to use. So I'm a Spanish teacher, so some things are in Spanish. But basically what it looks like and ends up looking like is you would have one for each of your subjects. So here, if I'm doing English, who your teacher is, your teacher's office hours, their email, contact information, and then the week. So I actually give my students this format weekly, and maybe you can use this weekly as well if that's how your school is functioning right now. So when I'm done going over this, I would love to hear how we can maybe modify this for your school or for your needs. I always remind them that this is their best friend during this time, and they should print it out and keep it handy. Just like the schedules that I showed you guys earlier, definitely put it, I don't know, somewhere in your room, wherever you're doing your work, to actually follow the schedule and to actually follow the checklist. I also tell my students, like when they have their break, that's their time to use their phone, not while they're doing school, because if not, those 30 minutes of class will be like 10 minutes. So make sure that you have it somewhere where you can see it. And then I also provide a line for them where it says anything you need to remember for that week. Maybe your teacher's giving you a quiz, a test, a project, something of a big value that will be graded for more equivalent to a test. So I always tell them to write it here so that they remember and do not forget that that's what's happening that week. And then here, as you can see, every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they have an assignment, and I write it for them. And all they have to do is use this line to cross it out or check it off. Or some of them do highlight over it. That way they know they're done. Whatever works for you. And then for homework, okay, Monday, my homework is so-and-so. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So again, very detailed and organized so that when you look at it and you see it in front of your computer, you're like, okay, I did this for English, I did this for math, I did this for science, etc. And the last thing that I added for my students, which they actually were very thankful and most grateful for, was this bottom section, which I think is very important for you as well, or I think, because you need to, during this time of virtual learning, we emphasize to our students that it's very, very important for you to reach out to your teachers. We're all here to help you. And I think that teachers would appreciate when you reach out to them and showing them that, you know, you're being proactive. So what I did with my students was, if they schedule a meeting, a conference call with me, I ask them to highlight it, circle it so that they don't forget. I tell them to write it at whatever time we agreed on. And then finally, are we meeting through Google Meet, Zoom, or exchanging email? Maybe it's just a quick, you know, back and forth exchange email. We don't really need to see face to face. So whatever works best for you. And that's what I've done in regards to virtual learning. I hope that this helps in some way. And I will be adding it to the chat. Before I go any further into other things, I would like to hear some response. Like, do you think this could work for you? How could you change it? I don't know, any feedback on what you think? Did you have something like this already? Did your teachers provide you something like this? Do you see yourself using it? Cool. All right. Well, hopefully you can, or you will use it, or I know some way help you. And again, everything that I just showed you, please feel free to adapt to what you need, because obviously these are just examples, and you only know what's going to work best for you. So moving on, I don't know how. Yeah, stop the sharing. Okay. So moving on, I would also encourage you all, I told my students to do this, encourage to have like a note card or again, a Google Doc or something, Microsoft Word document, whatever it is, what it's on is not as important as what's the information that will be on it. And what I encourage my students to do is reach out to all of your teachers. Make sure that you have their correct emails. Make sure you have their office hours. That's key, because during their office hours, just like when you're in school, that's when you can reach out to them and ask them for that review time. So I would write that somewhere. And not only your teacher's office hours, but I also went ahead and told my students that they should probably also write down their guidance counselor. I'm sure your guidance counselors are with you during this time. So our guidance counselors work 24/7 on the clock, but make sure that you get their office hours and their contact information, so that if you need to reach out to them for whatever reason, it's right there in front of you. So I think that's something that you should definitely consider doing moving forward with the virtual learning, because if your schools are anything like ours, we have no idea when we're going back. So also make sure that you check in with your teachers. I ask my students to check in with me in the middle of the week, which is usually a Wednesday. So Wednesdays, they sent me an email and say, Senora, where am I at? What do I need to do? Does everything look okay, etc. And then at the end of the week, because I make their assignments due at the end of the week, so they kind of want to make sure that, you know, am I on track to finish by the end of the week? And I highly encourage that you do the same with your teachers. Reach out to them and see, like, where am I? How am I doing? Etc. in their class, because realistically, virtual learning is very different than the classroom, and you want to make sure that, you know, you're still getting the material that you need for next year, just like I tell my students. And most importantly, do your best to keep in touch with your classmates as well. In our case, I tell my students, like, just like I told you earlier, start Google Meet with them and review sessions, because I know that for my students, the thing that they miss the most is just being with their friends. So maybe adding that to your schedule that I showed you earlier during your review time, make it a thing where you and your best friends, you know, see each other during Google Meet or Zoom, and make it a thing so that you're seeing them and communicating with them. But that's definitely something that I highly recommend that you do, so that it seems somewhat normal. Any questions so far, or comments? I don't want to do all the talking. I want to help you. No.
Does everybody know how to unmute themselves? You're welcome to speak freely when Alma asks questions. So we want this to be collaborative. So if you need help unmuting, just shoot me a text in the chat. I can unmute people on my end, but you can certainly unmute your.
No questions, comments? Okay. If there is nothing so far, I would like to, oh. It's okay. Non-tech. What do you mean by non-tech? Because if I'm reading this correctly, what I tell my students is they don't necessarily like their checklists. A lot of them keep it online and highlight with a highlight on the document. So okay. Yeah. Yeah, I tell my students that they don't, I mean, it's up to them. They have the choice. It's on the document. So some of them like to print it out. And some of them, like I said, do it just all online where they go back to the document and they cross it off or highlight it with the tools that Word or Google Doc has for them. So that definitely can be an option. No problem. Any other comments or questions? And I think honestly also with the schedule, it's better to keep it online when it comes to my students because it can change every week. So when they are filling out their schedule, they keep it here. Oh, I'm not sharing the screen anymore, sorry. They're not sharing the, they fill it out every week, whether they're changing their class period, and it's just easy to make that change online as opposed to writing it all over again. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that my students are slowly learning that all of their teachers are sending them documents, and something that happens that was brought up to my attention with my students was when you click on the document, it downloads to your computer. And I would love to recommend that, or I recommend it to my students that all the students make folders with pertaining subjects. So maybe they have a folder for English, math, science, foreign language, history. And what I mean by folders is online folders, whether it's on their USB drive or on their desktop. And the reason I say that is because they're going to need to go back to it at some point. And a lot of the students are just downloading. And then, yeah, they can go back to their downloads. But if we go on like this for a while, it'll take them a while to go back and look for it. So I highly recommend that they have some sort of organization in terms of folders. And I will share what I mean by that in just a second when I can pull it up. Because it can get overwhelming when they're trying to look for something. Especially, this happened and was brought to my attention because the students are getting ready to test or take a quiz. And if they want to study for something, they obviously want to go back to their documents that their teacher sent them. And that automatically downloads to their computer. So it took them a while to find it. And then I said, well, maybe we spend some time just organizing your documents in the appropriate folders so that you don't spend a lot of time looking for them and less time studying. And this is, has anyone experienced that where your teacher sent you a document and it just downloads to your computer and then you have to find it? So I'm going to share my screen here with you quickly so that I can show you what my students have done on their end. And they were actually very productive with it. So here I'm going to show you exactly what I meant by the folders, and it's all online. So they started actually doing their folder as weekly folders. So they have virtual learning week 1, week 2, week 3. You do not need to do it this way. It is completely up to you. But before that, if you notice, it was a folder for all your homework or the vocab, and then split by chapters. So that's something that you can do. And again, maybe you just want to do, let's say, one folder's for English, so that everything that you download, you put into your English folder, math, science, etc. And that way, when you click on it, all of your stuff are on there. Your platform will obviously look different, but that's definitely something that has worked for the students when studying for their quiz or tests virtually. We need some online learning tools. Any online learning tool recommendations? Yes. So what I do a lot with my students is, and I'm maybe some of the students here can speak for this, but I do this. I use EdPuzzle a lot. That's something that has helped my students kind of understand and grasp an idea of a subject or concept, whatever it may be. So EdPuzzle is great. What else is out there? What other things do people use? Oh, have you guys heard of Socrative, maybe? That's also very popular. I'm going to share my screen again with you. So EdPuzzle has many awesome tools that the students love. Yes, I can definitely add EdPuzzle. And what you see here is, or you can't see it completely, let me open it up. What you see when you go to EdPuzzle, the main page, sorry, my computer's a little slow. You can log in with your school account, or you can make your own login information, sign up on your own with your personal account. It doesn't matter. But the cool part about EdPuzzle is that they offer for every subject. And they are videos that either teachers have done before or that YouTube has, and has it more of a learning to simplify the concept for you. Whereas you just go to YouTube and they just talk and then don't really do the comprehension part of it. So EdPuzzle does that. It has comprehension side, like making sure that the student is comprehending what you are actually watching. So this is what the homepage looks like. Now, if I go to popular channels, maybe I want the EdPuzzle, YouTube, Khan Academy, National Geographic, TED Talks. It's all here for you. And if you go to YouTube, let's say I click on YouTube, okay, whatever the most popular videos in regards to whatever subjects students are looking for are there. Like this right here is on percent solutions. Maybe you want to do non-traditional careers profile if somebody's doing a paper on that, decimal place value. So it's already taken everything from YouTube and just kind of done a narrow search for you based on what you want to look for. So if I want to look for American history, just being very, very broad, all of these videos have been taken from YouTube in order to help you understand the concept. That's if you go to YouTube here. If you go to EdPuzzle, now if I click on EdPuzzle and look for American history, this is the cool part about it, that now you click on the video and you have questions that are, if you see right here, it says 5. So like it'll have 5 questions just to make sure that you're understanding the what's being taught to you or what's being spoken, which is good for you as a student to comprehend. And then same thing with Khan Academy, National Geographic. So whatever you need to look for is already here. Does this help? So EdPuzzle is one of my favorites. I know many, for those who are students on the call right now, I'm sure you've heard of Quizlet. My students love Quizlet for vocabulary review. Again, you can look for Quizlets. So like my students, if they're looking for a Quizlet on, I don't know, imperfect verbs, there's already Quizlets made for you, which you can study. So even if your teachers don't give you all of this information, there's sites out there. So I will write them down here. Quizlet is one of them. Oh, autocorrect. Quizlet. EdPuzzle is one. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Kahoot. So even though you're not in the classroom, Kahoot has a feature where you can do a review on your own, which my students do a lot. So Quizlet, EdPuzzle, Kahoots are good. Socrative are also very good. Sorry, the autocorrect on the computer. Socrative is good. And then if I think of any more, I'll definitely share those with you or have Matt share them with you. I'm having great difficulty getting the kids in sync with distance learning. My son is almost boycotting school because it's essential. Just like, yes, I think that the one thing that kids are having trouble with, like I mentioned before, is definitely the virtual learning and not being in the school. And my recommendation to my students was, having those meetings with his friends. I say his because I teach at an all-boys school, but with their friends. I teach freshmen. So funny that you say this, because the freshmen, I have some kids who like it, but still miss their friends. And I have some kids who just don't like it and are having a hard time and just, like you said, don't want to do anything. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Matt, please correct me, I think Dr. Nick is going to have a session about how to deal with this, right? Separately, or no, or similar?
He has a stress management class and kind of optimal performance class coming up this week.
Yeah, so I think that would definitely be something great to attend, since it touches on the other effects of virtual learning, this is my biggest recommendation, like I said, would be to get in touch, video chat. My kids do it with me sometimes, just to chat with me or with each other. That's my best recommendation for that. I'm sorry. But definitely check out Dr. Nick's for stress management. And then I also told my students to reach out to their guidance counselors, whereas they have better ideas to how to approach that situation. Any other, for those of you who asked for more online learning tools, does this help? Like Paul, does this help for you? Trying to think of any other online tools that I can help you with.
Yes, these are helpful.
Awesome. Perfect.
The EdPuzzle thing looks very useful, and I see it has a link to Khan. We have been using Khan Academy, which my older child, middle school level child, has found very interesting and useful.
Perfect. Yes. Yeah, and like I said, EdPuzzle is awesome because even if their teacher doesn't assign it, I love how it can do a comprehension by asking questions already assigned by other teachers. So they kind of get an idea on how well they're understanding the material. So. Cool. Well, I think that's it on my end. Matt, do you think I'm missing something? Did I cover everything?
No, thanks, Alma. And everybody will get a video recording of this. You can always reference back to it. We'll email that out after this is over. And Alma's going to be offering some additional, webinars and things in the future as well. So definitely stay tuned and make sure to stay tuned for all the things that we're going to be offering, because this is really all geared towards helping your kids, succeed through this online environment.
Yes. I know it's hard for the students right now, but if there's anything, at least from our school, is our main focus is how can we help the students, deal with what's going on. And I don't know what other schools are doing out there, but in order to keep the, the communication with my students and for them to have some sort of sense, I actually asked our school to do pen pals. Maybe that's something that you would want to, even if your school's not doing it for your student, or if you're a student here, maybe that's something you kind of want to look into on your own. The pen pals app is amazing. It kind of puts you with another pen pal from a different part of the world. And I told my students that their job is to see how other countries are dealing with the pandemic. So I highly recommend that as well, where it's more of a chatting and you get to meet somebody virtually and kind of what they're dealing with. So that's something that we are looking to do. That's just a recommendation.
Alma, would you mind throwing up the in the chat room the link to those Google Docs?
Yes, of course. Except not sure how to do that.
Or how about this? If you send me the link to them, and I'll include it in the email that goes out for the webinar as well, for the video recording, so everybody can have a copy of that.
Perfect. I'll do that right now.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we've probably kept you all later than you wanted, but this has been good. So thanks, Alma, for doing this. And if anybody has any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to us. Otherwise, we'll keep throwing out content for you, and we're here to help. So, and we appreciate any feedback if there's anything else we can do to help.
Yes, thank you guys. I hope this was helpful.
Otherwise, we'll sign off and say goodnight. Yeah.
Good night.
Thanks, guys.